to stop me getting at the food. That's what it is. Sort of dashing about. Okay. So I was asked to come and have a chat with you about what I've been doing since last time we came out of the chat, and I thought, what did I tell them? So I had a look at the notes I prepared for last time, which apparently was November 2012. Which it's bit ago with that. And I thought, bloody hell, I've not done anything since then. I've been a bit of a lazy ass. And then when I started gathering all the things I had actually done since then, I thought, oh, it's too much here. So we'll try and whiz down it. Lots happened. In fact, I forgot entirely about this talk till Friday night in bed, 1 o'clock in the morning. I thought, oh shit. But mainly because my wife's been very ill. She started to be ill in 2012. She's carried on being ill the last 2 years. But about beginning of November, we had the ambulance round and she was in pain. And, long story, but basically she ended up going into Lancaster Infirmary and having a gallbladder removed, which hasn't she's not recovered really well from that. I only just got out of hospital about a fortnight ago. It's still very, very delicate. She teaches pupils. She's had to cancel all the lessons till after Christmas, and she's a bit dodgy. But she's well enough to be left by herself tonight, which is not always the case. But that was good. So I thought I'd have a look what I've been doing, and basically I've been attending a lot of maker fairs. I've been writing books, and I've been making projects. Not a lot new, really. Not different. Now, I've done that. I'm still. One of the nice things about attending maker fairs is that you get to collect a lot of lanyards. And here's a collection of some of my favourite lanyards. Some of them are sort of quite swish. They're laser cut perspex. There's a laser cut perspex from the Manchester one there, probably the biggest one that I've seen. And there's a laser cut. It's a plywood one. Those are from the Newcastle maker fairs, and this one here is my favourite. This is the Open Hardware Summit I went to in 2011, and that's a printed circuit board. So that's quite a thick sort of eighth of an inch printed circuit board with the Hardware Summit on there, which is quite good. And there's a Open Hardware Summit I went to in September, and that's a little bit ordinary. But I've got a whole collection of these. These are just some of the highlights I brought. But one of the ones that I got in London wasn't a badge at all, because whenever I've gone and I've had a word with the organisers and the person that's made these, he's always said, oh God, I wish I'd have knew what I was letting myself in for when I volunteered to do these 300 on my laser cutter or whatever. Went to the London one, and there was a kit. Basically, it was a blank piece of board with holes in, and you had to stitch your own. So I arrived on the fair, and oh yes, where's your badge? Here it is. Design your name on there, stitch that, and then you can go to your stall. Well, it took me half an hour. Anyway, I actually designed it, and it says Grumpy Mike, which, if you don't know, is my alias, my avatar on the forums, and I'm sort of reasonably well known for that. I just on the forums, just we're setting up. I'm now 4 posts off 36,000 posts on the Arduino forum, or as my wife calls it, that fucking forums. So I thought, hey, I like that. I like the idea of personalised. So one of the things I designed, first of all, designed my own with. Can't see it, you see, but like so.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if I show it on here, get a picture of it. There's the grumpy mite, and there's the grumpy mite illuminated. So that I wear that around my neck. I've got 4 AA batteries in there, 3 I think, and it's lasted me all year basically for every exhibition I've gone on. Goodness knows what. So I rather like that. Now when I designed that, I don't know if you remember, some years ago I bought a CNC machine that I'd done. And at the time, it only had a bit of a wobbly red pen on to draw. But what I've done with that is I've drilled in the back just 0.5 millimetre down from the drill, so it hasn't gone the full drill width. And I've written a program to allow me to dot, 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 and put the dots in, and it can come down and dip, 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 just dab them all and make it into a little badge like that. So I made that and I thought, oh, I like that. I'll do one. It flashes as well. If you have this in your pocket, you do this with it.
Yeah.
And it flashes. So I thought, I like that. I'll do another one. I'll do a posh one. This is my posh one. This is the one I have on my stand lately. And there's the Perspex thing. The edges are polished, and I polished it with the stuff that you clean the kitchen hob with, the ceramic hob. That same stuff. It's lovely. If you put it in a little Dremel and put, a little buffing thing, and it comes up really, really well. And it just sits inside there. And then that will plug in to a spare USB port. And it will flash. Which is it's jolly good. In fact,
So is it just some white LEDs underneath?
just some white LEDs. And an NE555 timer. Look at this. Now, the really impressive thing about this is that it's an NE555 timer, but it's on a surface mount package with 0.05 of an inch pitch, and it's mounted on 0.1 of an inch pitch ferro. So I've been very creative with a scalpel. So I put the scalpel there, but the output transistor's huge, and I wired it all, and it flight first time it went. Absolutely first, which is as well because I was going to throw it out the window if it didn't work first time. I was in Italy this year at the Maker Fair, and that was flashing away. This great big Italian comes along and says, "How much?" I said, "You what? How much you make me one?" I said, "No, I don't make it, don't sell it." And he sort of huffed a bit, and this other bloke came up to me and says, "He's very angry at you because you won't sell him one." That get out really quick because he just looked like a mafiosi sort of bloke. So yeah, I've got that, and it looks rather keen. So you can have a look at these badges later on. I'll put them over here. Some of them are quite interesting and intricate. I won't have that on all the time.
Can you give it a shove, just to twist it round?
Right.
Just to face me.
Make it live.
Right, thank you.
Because one of the things people say, what's your project? Whenever I go and apply for a Maker Fair or something, what is your project? Well, I don't have one.
No.
I normally take about 4. And this confuses people because they come along and they see a project, they talk about it, and oh, thank you very much, yeah, and they go, and so have you seen this one?
Yeah.
Oh, is this you as well? Yeah, this is me. And have you seen this? Oh, is this you? Is that 404? And I'll have to stop doing so many because I don't. they're not sure, but they always want. What's your project? So that's where I came up with Grumpy Mike's electro gadgets, which I thought was suitably vague, didn't pin you down to anything, yet sort of kept it in, kept it in basically what I was doing, what I was up to. Okay, so what have I been doing? Well, I've been writing books. I'm supposed to be retired, but I've been absolutely mown off my feet. These are the two books I had out. 2013 these came out. This one came out Easter, and this one just came out at Christmas. 27th of December, this one came out. Just in time to miss the Christmas market. Got them here, you can have a look at them. I'm going to go through some of the projects. This Raspberry Pi for Dummies. Ironic, really, because I would never read a Dummies book. I'm not buying one. I was bloody insulted by the name, I refused to buy one, and then someone said, "Would you like to write one?" Yeah, all right, I'll do. And what it was Sean McManus, who's the lead author, and this he's written about 3/4 of it. Saw some of my stuff on the website and said to the publisher, "Can we get that lad to do some hardware chapters for the end of the book for making things with Raspberry Pis?" So I got contacted and said, "Yeah, we can do it." And there's some nice little projects in here at the back. We've just had published the second edition of this, which is very good. So not only has it reaped the advance that I was given for writing it, I've got royalties from it, which is amazing. And there's a chance that I might get even a few more royalties from it. When it first came out, it was 360th on the Amazon's best-selling all-book list, which is not particularly bad when you consider the 6 million books on the list. So 360 is not too bad. However, it was March 26th. It was number one in computing and hardware. It was number one in computer and internet new hardware, and it was number one in computer internet computer science sections. So that was a little bit more grateful. And then I got that on a day when it was number two, and it says 264 days in the top 100, which is quite good. I think the initial print run for these books is 4,000, and that initial print run sold out within about 2-3 weeks. And I don't know how many print runs there's been since because they don't tell you. But the last I knew for global figures was last February, and last February it had sold 30,000 copies. Now I did inquire how many they'd sold yesterday over the weekend, but there'd been a bit of reorganisation in the Wiley offices, and I could only get I've only got contacts with people in America now, and they said, "Oh, well, we've sold 15,000, but that's US only, and the second edition, it's only been out for a week, but we've sold 2,500 in a week." So quite not pleased with that. When was that? March 2013. you can see the vastly fluctuating range of books in there. That's out of 3,000. When you get to be an author, you get to go on a special website which gives you these stats. It doesn't tell you how many you've sold, but it tells you how you've sold in relationship to other people's. So that's the Raspberry Pi for Dummies second edition. Second edition. And that Raspberry Pi on the front page is physically that Raspberry Pi there. It is my photograph. Whereas it wasn't my photograph on the original. That's not my photograph. Not my Pi, but this is the same one. You see, it didn't even bother to take the Capton tape off the front to make it a bit more colourful. So that's mine. And we got contacted by Wiley saying, there's a new Raspberry Pi coming out, do you know? And I said no. And this was about a year ago.
Oh, right.
Right? So it's very early. And the reason they knew is because Eben Upton also publishes the Raspberry Pi manual with Wiley and wanted to do a second edition to mention the B+.
Yeah.
So Wiley knew about it. So I knew about it, sworn to secrecy, I didn't know what it was called, didn't know the spec or anything like that. I knew a new one was coming out, so I knew we had to do something about it. So we, Sean and I, updated some of the articles. Some of them were done afresh, some of them were not. I can't remember, did I show you the maze game?
I don't think so.
The rolling, but I don't think I did because it hadn't published and I was being very good. Okay, what I did, we'll wait. So we'll wait for a little bit later for that. Oh, yeah, the other thing that was quite amusing. I got a letter from email from the publishers that said, do you know your books won a prize in the edible book competition? And in New Zealand, there's an annual competition where people make cakes that are named after, that are books, basically, in edible form. Okay, so here is Raspberry Pi for Dummies. But it doesn't work in America. Raspberry Pi for pacifiers, or is it? Raspberry Pi for Dummies, which is that's hilarious. So, one of the projects in here was, basically an A to D converter, down there, an I2C A to D converter, and there's a lot of things you can do with it. One of them is to it's a 4-channel A to D converter, and you put light sensors on it, and you can trigger various things happening in the sound way. So, I've got a little video here. It's only 53 seconds long, but it gives you the idea. And we're not plugged in the audio here, so never mind. You can hear it. And it's a amusing little thing.
So is that using octo devices?
Yeah, they're just light dependent resistors.
Yes, okay.
So
Yeah.
you just whisk them out. Okay. And all my careful preparation, I've lost the other project. So I'll have to search for it. One of the first projects in here I wanted to do was a project, because it was for dummies, is not to have any soldering in it. So I thought, what can I make without any soldering? Well, there's really two projects in one. The first is a breakout board, which allows you to get at all the input outputs of the Raspberry Pi without using expensive connectors. Have a drop top.
It's all right.
Yeah, right. Without having all the expense or mess of soldering in, and it brings everything out to chop block screw terminals. Okay, and the other thing I made with it was a game, and there's the game, and there's in fact the breakout board next to it. So we've got the breakout board there. That plugs into the Raspberry Pi insulation displacement connector through the breakout board, and then you can wire what you like up to it. And what we've wired up to it here is basically some strips of copper foil, self-adhesive copper foil, which you get from the craft shop for doing stained glass work. So you cut your stained glass Tiffany lampshade or something, surround them in this sticky foil, and then solder them together to make whatever you want. It's called the Tiffany style. So what I've done is I've got some little blocks here and a dobber ball bearing, as we used to call them, a big dobber. And you get this big dobber, and basically the program in the game makes you go from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay? And if you don't follow that sequence, it sends you back to start again. Okay, so it's a very simple game, because all that happens is that the ball shorts out those two bits of copper, the computer detects it as a switch, and then, lo and behold, you can use it as a game. So what I did is made it enforce those rules, and every time it reached the particular number, it would play a sound effect. What's that? Video. Right. So here's a little movie of it. That's not the version that's on the website for copyright reasons.
Yes.
I described to people how to put their own sound samples on it. And these things down the side are, if you go and hit one of those, it aborts the countdown. You've got to start again at 5. And there's a nice little Python program that enforces those rules. So that's a nice no solder game. And I took that around most of the shows in 2013. That was quite a nice a nice little thing. And the kids loved it. But the adults knew what it meant. Because kids hadn't never seen Thunderbirds before. Till next year they're remaking it. So it's good. But I think it's going to be live action. Live action and puppets together. I don't know how that's going to work. So they'll make a complete mess of it. Actually, the Postman Pat was very good. Did you see the Postman Pat?
Movie.
Yeah, the Postman Pat movie. Oh, it was very good, that. We went in, and Kendall and said, "Can we come in? We've got no kids."
It's not paedophiles.
So, so that, as I say, went down very well.
Carry on.
When it came down to making this for the second edition, of course, the thing that was different was that this connector has now got 40 I/O ports on it, whereas the original one only had 26 on it. So this is the final proof. So this is as good as I see it before it actually goes off to the printer, with lots of things. Look in chapter 15. And corrections from it, but it's just whizzing down there. So my breakout board has sprouted another layer at the bottom to have them. There's a new diagram there with all 40 of the lines in. But basically the thing is the same. If you want to wire it up straight away, you go it like that. And I wasn't making another one with 40. 26 was enough. On a bit of plywood. It's amazing what ordinary plywood looks like. You put a bit of stain varnish on it, you know. It really creases there, and sort of added some extra ones at the end. So that's how that project looks in the second edition. I've also the second edition got a few other things like put an extra chapter in on Mathematica. Now if you don't know Mathematica, it's a symbolic computer language that allows you to do integration and numeric solving symbolic solving of equations. So you can just give it some brackets and expand that out, and it will give you all the x terms and that. And I last used that at the university when I was there. And we had a license, start license for it, and it's like £3,000 a seat. And it's still that sort of price. But the Wolfram Foundation have actually done a special version for a Raspberry Pi and let you have it for free, which is amazing. So you've got like 1,000 quid worth of software there. And as I say there, I said in the mid-80s the phenomenon of the killer app was born. Killer app meant that you bought the computer because you wanted to run the particular package. The computer was the Apple II and the software was VisiCalc. VisiCalc was the first spreadsheet software. And now the Raspberry Pi has its own killer app, and it's Mathematica. And I go on to conclude that killer apps don't get much more lethal than that. But it also does a lot of things in maths as well. If I just sort of whiz through to some of the diagrams there, we can sort of have sine waves. You know, you're worried about how you spell sine. Should we put an E on it, or should we not put an E on it? Well, it hasn't got an E on it in the language, right? Yeah. It's S-I-N, so it's a sine wave. Should we put an E on it? Forever asking me that. And then there's sort of that's a bit of a frequency modulated signal, polynomials, Lissajous figures, more of which later,
fans and irises, and then you can do 3D graphics and spheres with bits left out, spherical P mode oscillations. If it's any chemists amongst you will recognise those figures as the bonding of chemical elements in outer shells. If there aren't any chemists that recognise that, they probably sell herbal remedies. That used to annoy chemists at the university. They used to go to you're a chemist, have your own shop. He used to really get fed up with saying that. I'm an organic chemist. Oh, herbal remedies. And you get some 3D plots, and there's some very nice things. Now that's a bonus chapter. You can just go on the book's website and pick that up, basically because they weren't prepared to increase the page count. So that's sodded, but stick it on the bonus chapter. And there also, in the new edition, is an appendix on the, as we've seen there, on Riscos. And that's actually made it in the paper.
Yeah.
So it's a Riscos paper, and I go through things like longevity and code, and what you do next, what it's good at, what it's not so good at, and go through the story of when it happened. So that's in the Dummies. Now, I did come across a bit of a problem with that. You wouldn't think it would be a problem. But the second edition had a different technical editor. The technical editor said this. I'm reading this.
Well, then you tried this, is that right?
You might need to edit the bit when I talk about my impressions of this technical editor, which I think you might share, having read this. I have to say, I really can't do much on this chapter. It's based off an operating system 27 years old. I'm only 18. The majority of this operating system was stopped being made in 1998. No, the grammar and the English of this is absolutely lovely. 2 years after I was born, I got into computer early, but not this early. I also find this chapter very opinionated, and many of the reasons for Riscos are based on opinion, and many contradict my opinion. 4 reasons on using Linux. Why you put 2 4s in? I would suggest not to include this chapter, as it would also throw many beginners off track. A, your goal is into a completely different topic of computing, which is not designed for dummies. I think you might disagree with that. And B, how it is written to me reads as why I should not use Linux. I myself am a day-to-day user of Linux and find this annoying as the person who likes Linux. From a beginner's point of view, I have just done a whole book using Linux to be told not to use Linux. I am happy to talk about this chapter more if you wish, but I can't provide any technical views on a piece of outdated software which was made before I was even born. He's 18. Reminds me of my son Alec when he was 3. He said, "I've never seen anything like that in all my life." You're 3. So I thought, who is this guy? So I Google it, and he finds out I'd actually met the bugger. I'd spoken to him. He's a guy called Ryan Wormsley, and we'll sort of refer to him ever since as Blot. He's supposed to be some sort of wonder lad in Raspberry Pi world, because when he was 16, he sold a couple of kits that blinked LEDs.
Right.
So, he's supposed. So he was giving a talk at the Raspberry Jamboree at the beginning of the year. This is before he sort of crossed the path. And I thought, oh, this is this wonder kid. I'll go and listen to his talk. So I went and listened to half his talk, and he was so
boring and so lacking in any spark at all. And he came round to my stand. I was showing some stuff, and I tried to engage him in conversation, and he was just completely, well, block-like. And I think this picture really does do him justice.
Oh, it's him.
It's him. That's him. He's the most uncommunicative, lacking in enthusiasm lad I've ever come across. And this is before he wrote a lot of bills like that. So, one of the other things he said on the ATD converter, I had an axial capacitor, which is a capacitor with two wires out one end of the cylinder. I've never seen components like this. I thought we came out of the other end.
They're all axial.
They're all axial. How on earth are you going to make this with with capacitors? Because and I thought the job of a technical editor is to provide some technical overview, and to do that you need a bit of experience. Okay, and it's this one thing that Blot doesn't have.
And is he still technical editor?
He was technical editor of the second edition, right? So I basically wrote very nasty comments on whenever he suggested doing anything that was. I think he made one suggestion that I said, yeah, all right, we'll do that. You can't reject them all. No. But all the others were complete utter crap. And they were based on things like that, you know. So, but I had a bit of falling out with Sean about that, because he wanted to change the risk-cost chapter as a result, and I didn't. So,
Because his comment about the saying about he uses Linux and RISC OS is really old. I had someone else use that argument and then pointed out, so you don't use Intel chips? And I went, yeah, of course. Well, actually, the Acorn chips are more modern than the Intel chips. And oh, really? Yeah.
yeah, his argument for, I said, RISC-OS stuff's more stable. And he said, oh, Linux is only not stable because it's advancing all the time. Advancing from one mistake to the next, you know. And well, I find a lot of Linux has got, they don't, what we call regression test them. So the next version is likely to have more mistakes in it than are cured by the version, because they haven't actually back tested it, which I came across for another book, which I'll talk about. So we had a little bit of a kerfuffle about that one. Never mind. Now, when I'd done the Raspberry Pi for Dummies and got me chapters in on time, etc., I got a phone call from the publisher, or the publisher's. It's like an A&R man. Saying, would you be interested in doing Raspberry Pi projects? Andrew Robinson, the man that designed the Pi Face module, had got this book out, and he'd written 2 chapters on it, and he was really finding it difficult, and he wanted to concentrate a lot on his business selling the Pi Face. He was a lecturer, I don't know how permanent he was a lecturer, and he at Manchester Victoria University. And he gave that up and started making these Pi Face interfaces and developing that. Didn't have a lot of time. Would I like to write half the book? So I said, yeah, I'll write half the book. Now, he'd planned the book out already, so most of the projects in here are his. I said, do they all have to be his? He said, no, you can change them if you like. So there's a couple of mine in there, and they're done a little bit with my twist on them as well. So I've done half this book. In the end, Andrew got a couple of other authors to do a few of the other chapters as well. So even though he designed his lead author, he hasn't written most of it. I don't know whether you saw Springwatch the other year, where they were monitoring blue tits going in and out of the nesting box. Yeah, that's Andrew. And that project is in that book. So if you want to build that with the his little infrared remote control thing, uses through that, you can count the blue tits and you log how many visits there are against whether it's raining and stuff like that. So it's quite nice, and he's done quite a nice little write-up with how to make the bird box with the slots in it, and how to wire it up, and little pictures of that, and that's quite nice. Completely renumbered the chapters, so the chapters I've got in my book with that print aren't the same as the family print, but that's good. One of his on here was a talking chicken Twitter reader. So you'd had this chicken, and in actual fact, given his due, it was on Rapid, which is a distributor, and they had a chicken, animated chicken, £3.50. Bit of a bargain, really. And basically, it was a motor that you turned on and off, and this sort of cloth chicken that went up and down, and the chicken did that. And what it does is it sits monitoring Twitter for anything with hashtag chicken on, which apparently means something. I can't use Twitter. I just don't understand where they go to, what hashtags are. But anyway, so it's a nice little article. And there's a chicken.
So what languages do you use on these projects? Is it mixture?
It's made in Python.
Right.
So in fact, it's all Python in there, and I think it's 99% Python in here. So he had a few others, and the sort of half were software based, and the other half were hardware based. I did. So I did the an auto cue prompt, which basically was made out of a cardboard box and a bit of window glass, done at an angle, and you rest it on your monitor, and it projects through, and you can see the camera, and you can see it through the auto cue. There's a little story about Tony Hancock using auto cues. Don't you know that? You know Tony Hancock? He discovered the auto cue. He was a bit of a drinker, and one night he got really completely blatted and didn't have time to learn the script, and in those days it went out live on TV, and they stuck it on auto cue, and he got through the script, and he thought this was marvellous, and always used auto cues after that. And people say that's where the edge came off his comedy, when he started using the auto cues, and he eventually sort of fell to drink and committed suicide. And that story in the front, they said, is this suitable for cautionary tale, I said. Cautionary tale. So I got that pass. Then there's a tic-tac-toe, or noughts and crosses, just simple how to program it, and little levels of artificial intelligence. Ping, which is the anti-copyright version of Pong. just to avoid copyright, you know. And this is quite funny because it's a box standard sort of two-player or one-player tennis game. But I did some sound effects for that, and it was the time when Wimbledon was on, and I wanted to have these sound effects of these women tennis players going as they hit it. Yeah, do you know that they do that? And I got this folder on the desktop, and I called it Women Grunting. And my wife saw this. What on earth is this folder? So I had to explain that it really was for work. It is for work. One of the things that Andrew, one of the software things that Andrew wrote, or put down, and the last one I put on, projects. He should be here. It's Pieman. He wanted a Pieman clone, so I wrote an equivalent
Pac-Man clone and called it Pie-Man because it was a Raspberry Pi. And also, there's been a pie theme. There'd been a slice of pie, and I sliced the icon over and lifted the lid and made it go down like that. So it did a reasonable facsimile of it. You see the lives on the left hand side of the screen. Another pie bites the dust there. And we've got a high score. And it's, and that's a typing program. But not only the typing in, I explain how it works and why it works. And really, it was really a bit soul destroying because the first time I got sort of about halfway through and I lost the SD card, it just went float. So I had to start all over again. And it was really a bit soul destroying. I threw it in the corner for a month. So there's a Pie Man in there. There's some Sean came along and did some Minecraft work and did some automatic maze builder in Minecraft project on there. And then we get onto the hardware projects, which is mine. My forte, if you like. Shush. And so the first one I got was Colour Snap. You think Colour Snap? It's a game I invented, really.
So no cards, but colours.
Just colours. Yeah. And basically, with Colour Snap, you've got a light in the middle and two buttons, and the light will flash different colours. When it flashes two colours on the road, you have to hit and say, snap. I developed that game for a little project over there, which we'll probably see after the break. So that was Colour Snap. There was a reaction tester, his twittering toy, that was his. Disco Lights. I like this one. This is, he wanted, I mean, he put the title Disco Lights, so there's nothing else on that. So what I did is I with the pie face interface, I got some LED strip lights and I wrote some software that would allow you to fill in a grid by clicking and make a sequence, and then it would go through that sequence. And then I did a thing which would advance the sequence off the sound of the music. So you take the music, rectify it, smooth it, take the low pass filter, and use that to hit the advance the sequence, and that worked rather well. So this has got two sides. One with going through fixed sequences, and you'll see the pattern on the background, and the other going through the light activated. And it's a mouse. So there you go. That's Cyclefly, by the way. You've probably never heard of them. They're probably a group that never really made it. They had 2 albums, and when I had my midlife crisis and ran a music fanzine in Manchester in the late 90s, we interviewed these guys, and we were down to interview. We worked with PR people, and we were always getting free CDs and free guest list places and general legged about. And we weren't the usual sort of teenage hangers-on. I mean, all right, it's 20 years ago, but I still had a beard and was in my late 40s, so that was really ancient. But the groups really loved it. But Cyclefly, we'd seen before, and they were really heavy grunge, Irish band. And Wendy said to me, I'm not looking forward to interviewing him, I'm a bit scared. Anyway, he was as nice as pie, was one of the nicest lads we've ever interviewed. And he had this pink plastic knee-length Mac on as part of the stage. And he said, oh yes, my mum made that for me. And the funniest thing we said to him, he said, well, how do you think your being a lapsed Catholic has affected your lyrics and your music? And he says, oh no, that doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me at all, that. So I said, well, what about that track you've got called Super God with the lines, when dead men talk, they speak in tongues of angels. Oh, that, yes, that. He was rough. Anyway, so that Cyclefly doing his thing. You can notice how they actually moved in the rhythm of the music, but not as a sort of steady thump, but had a feel of the music. So that worked a lot better than I thought. What else we got? There's a bit of home automation. Could control slot car racing, which sounds a lot more exciting than it was. It's one of Andrew's ideas, but basically I had to make it. And this was basically, you had a slot car race, you had multiple choice questions, and if you got it right, the first one to get it right, they'd have 3 seconds racing on the slot car. So in effect, your slot car was the score.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you go through it, and I made sort of various things to do with that. A Facebook-enabled roto sketch. I think I put there, hey, I've got a brilliant idea. How about 2 knobs that you turn around and move a point on the screen? I said, and just as a daft, crazy twist, you take the controls, turn it upside down and shake it, and the picture disappears. Of course, I had a little mercury switch inside that was detecting when it turned it upside down and shook it. The trick was that it was enabled, it was Facebook enabled, so that you could actually click on a button and it would automatically post the picture that you'd done to Facebook. So you could see the picture if you'd have wanted to. Rubbish. Well, they are when I draw. But there's a little picture of the little. It was a small ball sensor which determined which way up it was going to go. There's a little thing. And got some pictures. There you go. We've got some sort of geometric type shapes of pictures that I did. However, last one for the food. What I did with that, I did one called a Harmonograph. And this is something I've wanted to build for a long time. And it wasn't on his list, and it's one I said, well, I'll have this as the last chapter. It ended up not being the last chapter, it was Andrew's Bird Boats. But it was meant to be something that would stretch you. That's the theory, because I was making it, my wife said, do you expect anybody to make something like this? I said, no, it's for inspiration, which is the way I put it. And what this
basically is 4 pendulums. And each pendulum is monitored for position. And the pendulums go along like that. And the relationship between the periods of each pendulum is plotted on what we call phase space, X, Y. So a pair of pendulums will control the position on the Y axis, and another pair will control it on the X axis, and it will plot a complicated shape. And these shapes are never the same twice, because you can never release the pendulums with exactly the same force or from this height or at phase, etc. on these fours. So it's different every time. And I produced this harmonograph, which again got hooked around a lot of the shows, mainly in 2013, but I took it to one just 2 months ago. And I'll give you, we'll do the video first. What I did was I monitored the position of the pendulum with a thing called a rotary Hall effect sensor. I was dying to use one of these for something. This was it. And you get a magnet and you put it in front of this sensor, and it measures the angle that magnet's at from the magnetic field. There's 4, maybe 8 sensors inside this chip, and it works out from the magnetic field. It picks up on each sensor where it's pointing, and it's 10 bits. So that's 1024. So that's nearly about 1/4 of a degree resolution, which is quite good. So basically, you get these things and you swing them around, and it makes pretty patterns. So this is a little video. Because Alec's gone and deserted me now. He's living in Chelmsford now. He used to work for Rockford oil company, doing work on oil rigs and safety things down in Chelmsford. But he's got a new job. He now works for Sky. So his brother said, "Well, you used to be evil, but now you're really on the dark side, working for Hancock." But he's done really well. He's a musician basically, and yet he's carved out this niche for himself as a programmer and tester in LabVIEW. He programs in LabVIEW, and he's got some exams in it and gone on courses. I think there are only about 60, 70 people in the country with his level of LabVIEW qualification. And he got a bit disgusted with Rockwell before the summer because they wouldn't send him on this LabVIEW course this year. So he went looking round, and he got this interview for a job in Norway, in Trondheim. And they asked him to do this LabVIEW problem as an exercise. And he says, "I worked all weekend on it and I really sort of put everything into it." And he came for the interview on Monday, and he says there was this technical director and 2 programmers, and we went through all the stuff and that, and the programmers
this technical director said, right, the programmers, what did you think of his program? And they said, well, he says, I've never seen any code like that before. I've never seen anything so easy to understand and read. I've never seen anything that's so complete. And it's very good. And this technical director says, would you have done anything different? He says, well, I might not have used that shade of yellow on this icon. Which point he says, oh, that's all right. So he got a free interview to Trondheim. So he went on to Trondheim. And what fell down with it was they couldn't. He didn't have a science degree, and they thought they wanted to have a science degree, so they wanted to arrange him to do some study in universities over there and take courses, but they couldn't get through the bureaucracy of the entrance requirements to the courses, so they couldn't. They said, I'm sorry, I can't get you these courses that I thought you could take to learn. So they knocked that on the head, and he wrote. He got another one, and it was for Sky, because they've got Sky bought Amstrad down there,
Right.
and so he's got Sky there. And he said he got wrong. He filled in the form, and he got the forms, and the recruitment agency rung him up and he said, I'm sorry, this is a rather unusual request, Alec. But is your dad called Mike Cook? Yes, he said. And it turns out that most of the people down there are people that I knew at Pace.
Right.
Set-top boxes is a small world. So this, come in, Alec. The other said, you really are like your dad, aren't you? So a bit before he got the job, he said, I was there a week, and somebody said to me, the way you hold your head, your dad does that. So I don't know if it's pleased. He's on more money than I ever was at Pace, but he's finally growing up. He still borrows money off you.
No,
well,
no.
money hasn't come through. I didn't know I wasn't going to get paid this month. See, children always want money off you whenever they contact you. So that's Harmonograph. These are some of the ones that people did in Rome. You can change the colour as it plotted. I rewrote this to use a program on the Mac, so I didn't have to take a Raspberry Pi, because I couldn't actually get a Raspberry Pi monitor in a suitcase to go on an airplane.
All right.
And in fact, the whole thing had to be really deconstructed to actually fit in a suitcases that I could get. But anyway, these are the sort of things. You can change the colour by pressing the key as it does it. So these are some of the various patterns that we produced. It takes about 2 minutes to produce them because of the swings of the pendulum. But it's a lot easier than actually doing the mechanical version of a harmonogram.
Yeah.
And of course you can configure it for 2 pendulums, 3 pendulums, 4 pendulums, just at the click of a switch, just by ignoring the appropriate signals. If you have 2 pendulums, you get listen-to-use figures,
Yes.
depending on the ratios of the figures, but anything more than 2, and you get these complex. Most of these are done with 4 pendulum. There's a whole different class with more, and these are 2-to-1 ratios. And the harmonogram that's been designed, it will do a 3-to-1 ratio as well. But I haven't actually done any work with those. They don't swing as long as more damping because there's no mass in the pendulum. So you have a mass in the pendulum to overcome the friction in there. So that gives you an idea of the sort of variety of pictures that you can get from it. So that's the picture. I actually got an email last week from somebody in Canada, and she's making one, which I thought, blimey, I didn't know anybody would make one. And she wanted to know how something was wired up, so I said, and then she sent an email back, can you tell me what these boxes are? They're resistors. Now, I'm not too hopeful about the success of this project. You know, that's the level of electronics, but we'll give it a bash. So that's these were designed to be printed off on a printer with a little logo on, and we were going to get one each. But the cartridges didn't work. They sold the wrong ones. So I took a printer and 3 ink cartridges and a lot of paper all the way around and all the way back. Absolutely sod on. There we go. That's why some were on the white background, because it was going to be printed. So those are the pictures on that book. So I think it's a nice place to call half time.
Yeah.
We'll have some food, and we come back after the break. I will tell you about 1 or 2 more projects and going around the various maker fairs and etc. that have been through this last 2 years.
Right.
Okay,
Thank you.
end of part 1.
Yes.
In the German sense of the word. Now, in Germany, in town halls, they have, in town hall squares, they have clocks that do things. You know, a little man comes out and it's a bell and there's a little morality play normally in them. And this lecturer at Manchester Metropolitan School of Art had got this idea to have a sculpture that did something in the reception room of this new building that they just had built for the School of Art. Now, you know if you don't, I used to lecture in Manchester Metropolitan University and had to leave in '98 when they closed the physics department down. I had to get a real job. I was a little bit, should I work on this? But anyway, I thought, yeah, go on, we'll do it. They'll say, he's paying, we pay. And that's the MMU nowadays. I used to work in this building, which has been, for a multi-storey, 7-floor building, it's been completely reclad on the outside. It was just an old 60s sort of tower block, and they've put all this fancy stuff on and all the coloured stuff on the walls. This is the new business school, wouldn't you know? Enormous. They need a spreadsheet, and that's it. That's the old library, and these are the old buildings. This is taken from the new arts block. So this was the this was the brief that we inherited. Basically, there's going to be 3 clock-like units. One of them's each one's going to have an iris in front of it, and there's going to be some numbers displayed on the side. And the numbers are supposed to represent some environmental measure of what the building's using, how much water, how much electricity, what heating is being used in the building. Behind the top one is going to be some still pictures. The middle one's going to be movies, and the third one is going to have some little compartments with three compartments with sculptures that can rotate into view in front of the iris. So the idea is that once every hour something happens for about 5 minutes. So there's these LEDs and lights on these areas, and these things open up. So that was the idea. I got that. It says, that's basically the idea of the thing. These 3 units, 3 large units on the wall in the reception area with numbers and irises and chains that go around there, LEDs on them. All jolly good fun. You've got to watch plans. You don't often have a sense of scale. Let me show you my first introduction to this bottom unit, which houses the sculptures.
These these are the boxes that are going to hold the sculptures. That's Lewis. He's the one half of the collective there, and this is the big frame that's going on. Oh, bloody hell. you do a mind switch. I mean, I was expecting something about the size of the table. But big, it's going to be the size of this table. Not 6 foot diameter. Enormous. So there's another one peeping over the system. So these are the numbers. They'd already started making them, and I had to hack them about to make them work, basically. But that's a little corner of my workshop, and there's those are the numbers there, lighting up. That's the back of the board. This is the interesting bit. This is the back of the board. Just screwed on a bit of wood on that. I got ribbed something shocking for that. There's a good bit of wood there. Just to hold them in place while we did them right. There's the front end of it. And that's the Arduino that we used. It was a Mega, and that was the shield on it. Basically, the wiring was a bit logistical nightmare. The whole thing was run from a Mac Mini in a cupboard behind the porter, and then it went all through this ducting that disappeared, and we got some wire on the end. So I made the decision to put all RS422 systems that would go up and alter the LEDs and the stepping motors and the things like that. So that was basically the circuit. It looks very simple, and it was reasonably simple. There's not a lot of electronics in, but there was a lot of it. There's another picture of the driver boards, little voltage regulators on there. Again, everything required different voltages. And numbers required 12 volts, stepping motors required 24 volts, logic required 5 volts. It was all a bit of a mess. There's the board on there. That really impressed them. That it was bolted on and it was all lined up. So there's a double row header on the Arduino, and they all go into that. That's the schematic of that. There's a better view of it. The LEDs were made in strips, those strip LEDs, and so we had to cut the strips up, and that's a little plan of how this LED first of all goes in that direction for so many LEDs, then it swoops around and then it goes in there, and then it swoops around. So you have to map it. The person only wanted to stop there. Only wanted colour washes and great sort of swathes of colour. Didn't want anything specifically definite, so they had to be mapped. This was the sculpture one, and that just had 4 little pads of LEDs. Basically, because halfway through the project they stopped making these LEDs and you couldn't get them anymore. You couldn't get them from a place where the university would be allowed to buy them from, right? Because you can't stick a university note on eBay, and it all got very bureaucratic. So we arrived just after Christmas to be greeted with the scaffold that the workmen had put up, and we thought, bloody hell. These things, by the way, we didn't have time to get them working on the ground. They had to be put there and installed and tested in situ, because the scaffold had to be put up whilst the university was on holiday. So it had to be put up on the Christmas holiday. And there's Lewis, and that's Chris, and that's Nick. Nick does the software, Lewis does the hardware and the design. Chris does general programming of images and TVs, and that's Susan. And she's the lab superintendent. And we looked at one another, Susan, and I said, I know you, don't I? And
the first year I was there at the university in '79, she was a physics technician, and she left after that first year to go and work in the arts department. So I hadn't seen her since 1978. And there was a lot of that went on. You know, people were, what are you doing? It was quite good. Not quite as good as a long time now. Anyway, this is the sculpture one, ready to go. They wanted a clear finish of the sculpture. Well, what's the point of having an iris if you can see what the sculptures are? But anyway, that's art. Apparently it's art. Else is not to wonder why. This one, I've got a little video of Nick moving these around. These sort of things are generally done about 8, 9 o'clock at night. And Nick doing. Very smooth. They were worried about the stepping motors for that one because of the imbalance and how long it would take to do down. So that was quite good. As Chris did a bit wiring, then we're looking at the pattern of that LED patch behind the ceramic. That's the girl who was in charge of the whole thing, was her idea. I can't remember her name. She'll come to me as soon as I drive on the M62. It'll come. And there's sort of effects that we were getting on the ground. That flashing wasn't supposed to be happening, you see now.
Have you got any marketing?
Have you noticed Cody's always almost done?
Yes.
Yeah? These are the chains, great big wooden things, you know, huge great things. And in actual fact the irises drove the numbers instead of was supposed to look like the other way around. And there's a picture. This is the first time the iris motor moved. So there's a video of that. And we didn't have any stops on there, so it sort of closed a certain number of turns and then opened again. You can hear it go. So. There they are, about to be parcelled up and dragged up the wall. There's the electronics on the board, stepping motors, stepping motor drivers, stepping motor power supplies. That's the HDMI video translator. This is my receivers for the controls that went on. And this amused me because I found this by a lift. It says, please do not remove assessment of work in progress. And I thought, if that's what counts as modern art nowadays, I mean, and I think it does actually count as modern art. Could have been tested. Anyway, there it is going up in a great huge crane they had to load this thing on the wall and putting the first one on. These are the number units. Wait with the cogs on, waiting for the chains to go through. And the other thing is this is the plywood cladding that was going on the outside of the drum. Of course, once the plywood cladding was on, you couldn't get in at the electronics. So guess when the electronics decided to break was once you put the plywood cladding on. Natural, you could have told them that. So there they are, hauling the second one up. So that's a view from the top. And that's John, who was in charge of the installation, and that's Phil, who was responsible for these, making these great big mechanical things. And there's Phil leaning over and doing this. Now, Phil, fine, you introduced this guy as Phil, and no problems. I'd known him, we talked to him about a month. And all of a sudden, I mentioned some of that Harrogate model engineering show to get, it was this diffuser stuff for the lights. And he says, oh yeah, I go to there, I do some model engineering. Oh yeah, do you? He says, yeah, I used to be in Sale Model Engineering Club. I said, do you? My best man at my wedding was there. He had a model engine called Titch. He says, is he called Nick Carton? I said, well, Nicky Carton, yes. Oh, right. He said, I knew Nicky, I went to school with him. Oh, right, fine. I didn't know you knew Nicky. And then I said, he said, where do you live? I said, well, I live in Haslingden now. I used to live in Whitefield. Where did you live before that? I said, hang on, what's your other name? And he was Han. And it wasn't Phil Han, it was Philip Han. And he used to have the garden that backed onto my garden. And they haven't seen each other since we were 11. And he went to grammar school and I went to secondary modern school. They haven't seen each other since. Of course, he's got old. I haven't changed a bit. So we had a great time catching up there. It was absolutely unbelievable, you know. Because he was never a mechanical engineer, he just took it as a hobby. He was in shipping in Switzerland for most of his working life. He married a Swiss woman, came back and decided to give it all up and be a lab technician for mainly these students are girls, 95% of them are girls, so they all swarm around him, trying not to, well, they're forever patching them up because they've got their hands caught in drills and stuff like that. Anyway, that was, you know, absolutely amazing coincidence. A couple of months before, I'd met up with the people I used to share a flat with in Newcastle when I was a student in Newcastle, and I hadn't seen 3 of those for 40 years, and that was, and some of them had gone old as well. Some of them hadn't changed a bit, but Pete, you never recognise Pete. And there's a selfie that I did on the computer with the oscilloscope up, trying to get the thing to work, sort of, at about 8:30 one evening, looking a bit phlegmatic. And then there's a thing with the number on. There's the wiring when we're trying to get things the right way around. There's it as it looks in place. So you get an idea of the scale. There's the reception, there's the wall, the scaffolding's down. You can see it does look like the diagram now. You can see it. That's my favourite view of it, looking down. It's sort of open atrium, and you know, and that's Phil. That's Phil, the wall there. The control is through that door. Sorry, that door there, and he's in a shell in the work through there. So that controls the and that's an early view of it when it was lit up. It was sort of half in light, half in dark. So that's a big project, and that's a bit of collaboration. So that's something I've not done before. How you all fix? You want to go, or you? Okay, let's just very quickly whiz through the Maker Fair. This is what I did in 2003. I did the Raspberry Jamboree in Manchester in February, 2 days. Newcastle Maker Fair, 2 days in May. British Computer Society in Birmingham. I was asked to do a talk about the Raspberry Pi and a seminar on it, and then they asked me to do it twice because they got sold out. They'd never ever sold out one event, and they'd sold out 2 in the same day, so I was really knackered. Then there's the London Maker Fair in July, that was 2 days. The Manchester Maker Fair in August, that was the 2 days. Brighton Maker Fair in September, that was 2 days. The Rome Maker Fair in October, that was 4 days. And the Gadget Show Live in November, Wiley's wanted me to publicise the book. And that was in 2003. And that was too much at my age. I was absolutely shattered in that. So in 2014, I made a policy decision. I did the Raspberry Jam, the Newcastle, and the Rome. And that was all I did in in those years. One of the problems about Rome was, of course, I don't speak Italian. So I made this. I've noticed that people ask you the same questions. You've got an exhibit, they always ask the same questions. RFID. What? It's RFID. You use it for going through windows, through doors. Yes, it's a Hall effect sensor on the pendulum, etc. So I made this, and it's a translator. And what I had was I got a guy from the Arduino forum to speak some answers. I wrote some answers, and he'd speak them. I had a list of answers, and I could roughly tell from what they were pointing at what question it was. So all I'd do is key in the appropriate answer, and it would tell them in Italian. So that's what this does. The volume control of the switch, you can't get these nowadays. Fine, I don't have none of the distributors. A switch volume control just don't exist.
Used to be standard.
They used to be standard.
Yeah.
I had to get this off some dodgy place on eBay. Anyway, if I turn it on, I thought, make a little robot face on it, and so when they came along, I would say, this is the standard of Grumpy Mike. That's me, and this is the Italian.
Ciao, sono Grumpy Mike e questo è il mio stand.
And you can see the little face and the mouth, and I had different patterns of the mouth, and all I did was sample the audio, the amplitude of the audio, and switch a different sample on of a bigger mouth, depending on what the amplitude was, and it works very well. So the next one says, I don't speak Italian, so I made this.
Siccome non parlo italiano, ho creato questa cosa.
And then I said, thank you for visiting my stand.
Grazie per aver visitato il mio stand.
And then there's a whole lot of other things I could do.
Nessun animale è stato maltrattato durante la creazione di questo progetto.
So there's a nice little translator, and then people loved it. You know, couldn't hear it because it's so noisy in the stand, but it was quite amusing.
Puoi risolvere il puzzle con questo numero di tentativi.
So I'll turn that off. That's what I used. When I went to Newcastle, the other project I did was putting a microscope, a Raspberry Pi camera on a microscope and producing these sort of microscope pictures. And this is a little girl who was assigned to me as a helper, because this 2014, because she was going to work. Graham was going to come, but then he couldn't. She works in a haematology lab, and she said this was a better quality picture than she has to work with her lab. And that was a little 20 quid microscope off eBay, and it was a £15 Raspberry Pi camera. And I won some, I came second in the Farnell Raspberry Pi camera competition, and I got a runners-up prize in the Spark, in the Lady Ada Raspberry Pi photo competition just after in September. Got a $30 gift voucher, which I've not actually done anything with. It's not the prize, it's the winning that takes part. But you saw there that I had on the stand, I do these sort of little posters, and one of them was free jazz, and this is a nice little project, and this is going to appear in the next book that I've got coming out, which is Raspberry Pi Projects for Dummies.
Right.
So I've got Raspberry Pi for Dummies, Raspberry Pi Projects for Dummies. Okay, so but I've not finished writing it all. I've got one more chapter to write, But this is the free jazz. Basically, it's a camera and a glitter ball from B&H Bargains. So it's 2 quid glitter stick. It was a £5 webcam, and basically that's what you see from it. Some RGB LEDs underneath, and you pick out various bits of the image, and when you get a colour, you trigger a note, either a jazz, a saxophone, a drum, or a bass note, and it gives you, as the name implies, free jazz. No one would ever dare to pay for it. And this is it going at the very brief clip of it going at the Newcastle Maker Fair, and these are some speakers that squirt water when they react to sound that Alec bought me for Christmas last year, and there it is in the front, going through mainly. Bit difficult to hear on that one. So here's one that is it gone? That's it. Sorry about this. I had it all queued up and it seems to have disappeared. This is one that Alan recorded at the Raspberry Pi Jamboree, because unbeknownst to me he's keen on jazz.
So, we have here a USB camera, some gel with glitter in, some speakers, and underneath we have a Raspberry Pi. Is there a Raspberry Pi in here? No, it's in there, with a Pi face on top. Is it using the Pi face? No, we would just go straight into it. Okay. And then we have an image and some Python code. And we have this gentleman here, Mike Cook, Grumpy Mike. So, Mike, it looks like you've created something here that plays free jazz. Is it free jazz? It is, because you know what's made for it. It's made from bits from Home Bargains. That was £2 as a device. That was a £5 web camera, and that's all that's in there. Really, I took these things apart, and there's a little push button with your mini squiffer. So, is it possible to turn the volume down just a little? Because it might.
So he didn't like it that much. But apparently he used to be in jazz improvisation.
That was quite simple.
And that was quite sympathetic with it, because that's how he got the idea for the Raspberry Jam, was jamming from the jazz movie. So let me just, conscious of time, projects. Let me just tell you about the Rome this year. I had this speaking challenge, for the earphones.
Yes.
And in English, I had a little nursery rhyme. Mary had a little lamb.
Yeah.
So you had to read that whilst you had the feedback.
Oh, yes.
And you'd fall over and
Yes.
you'd make a
Absolutely.
complete bollock of yourself. So when I came to translating these into Italian, I thought, what can you do? What is an Italian nursery rhyme? So I asked the Italian about it, and he said, "Oh, Nina Nana." I said, "Okay, Nina Nana." There it is. Nina Nana, questo bambino la chilidu, and it went on. And I thought, yeah, okay, well, we'll do that. And then I got curious. I wonder what it means. Now, bearing in mind, this is news out. I don't know if you've heard of the trouble that Bartelli's got into for tweeting something this week. The footballer, racist. because it's Super Mario. He jumps like a black man and grabs coins like a Jew. And it was supposed to be anti-racist, but it came out wrong. So I translated that, I put that through Google Translation, and it says literally, lullaby, lullaby, oh, this child to those who do, I will give the black man that keeps him a whole year, I'll give him to the witch that keeps him for a week. And I thought, hang on, you can't say that. So I said, will it cause offence, especially to black visitors? And this guy said, no, it's very old. I believe that the black man is like the devil. Oh, right, you know. When you're in a hole, stop digging. In Italy and all the Mediterranean seas, they suffered from piracy from African countries, part of the Ottoman Empire, just till about the middle of the 1800s. Pirates attacked the little towns along the coast and took part of people as slaves or prisoners and asked for ransom. And somebody else said, it's a very, very old novel, and when it refers to a black man, it refers to the devil or a bad imaginary man that's scary in the mind of children. It's not racist because it's very old, and then people with black skin in Italy were seen like invaders, as if that makes it all right. So I said, no, you can't have that. I'm not having that. So they said, well, okay, what about Amberbacci? So I got Amber, that's the one I used, that's the one. I translated that, it was no better. Amberbacci Cicoco, as the Italians say. Well, the Amberbacci Cicoco doesn't translate. I think it's nonsense. I think it's like, hey, diddle dumpling. Yeah, some joke. Yeah, it does. But then it goes, 3 owls are sitting on my chest, on my bedroom chest. The doctor's daughter makes love to the owls. Literally. Has sex with the owls.
Yeah.
Yeah? The doctor doesn't like this. The doctor feels quite sick. So at that point I thought, it's a cultural thing. I'm not going to understand it. I am not going to understand that. And because of that, I have some sympathy with Balotelli, with what he tweets, because it's a cultural thing and it just doesn't translate. And that doesn't translate. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew the tune to it. Everybody knew 5 different tunes to it. And they were delighted. They had to say that whilst they listened to themselves in the thing. So we'll just before I say that, the previous year again, stood on it. Right, just the final thing. The previous year there'd been Intel at the Maker Fair in Rome, and they have a sort of stage presentation for a day. And they launched their new thing called the Galileo. Nobody knew about it till then. And he gave them away at the back for free. He had 400 to give away. And as I was sat there, I went, no. And then during the afternoon session, I thought, well, I'll just have a look inside. You won't know. And everyone, what's he doing? How to do it indiscreetly. So it's that little module. I'm going to do something with that one day. Probably crush it. There must be some way of doing something, because every time it goes from light to dark.
Oh, right, yes.
It does that. And you got a little spaceman, or I think he was supposed to be in the clean room, and you got the board.
Yeah.
These sell at 56 quid,
Oh, right.
and they're crap.
Yeah.
So if you ever get tempted, don't bother. They will only toggle the outputs at something like 250 kilohertz. So you 800 megahertz processor on there, and the whole thing is scrambled. They just do not understand it. I said to some people as it was coming out,
hey, supping with the devil, this, isn't it? And apparently it was the team that designed it. what do you mean? So I mentioned that Intel weren't very... What it was, the tale was the CEO of Intel was looking at a demo from somebody, and he offered this guy, he said, look, you switch to the Intel chip and I'll give you a good price on the Intel chip. And this guy said, no. I said, I'll stick with the Arduino chip. He says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you the 1 million up price. He says, no, I want to... he says, I upped it. He says, I'll give it you at the price we sell it to the distributors. He said, no. He said, I'll give it you at cost price, what it cost us to make. No. You can have them for free. No. He says, why? He says, I like the Arduino community and the support you get with it. So this was the CEO's, and he's only been in 90 days, this is the CEO's go at buying a bit of that community and trying to do that. As I said, that's crap. They've got a new one out this year that maybe is a lot smaller. Maybe isn't crap, maybe it's crap, I don't know. I didn't manage to get one this year. So I think I'll finish off with just this little collection of videos. This is my other son Graham, who came along this year to help me, and he's smashing. He's got lots of charisma, right? Don't know where he gets it from, because my wife's got none, I've got none.
No, family trait.
Alex got definitely none, minus amounts of charisma. Graham oodles of it, and he's absolutely spot on. And here you can see him sort of interacting with these hordes of people coming around and trying these on, saying, and then they sort of collapse into fits of giggles, or they manfully go on and do it, and then take it off and bloody awful, and that sort of thing. So there's the last thing. I'll show this one. Best way to see it. Push around. That's an inflatable shark swimming. It's actually not tethered, It is when he takes it outside. I thought it was cool that was a handbag made with two drilled.
helping you with Acorn and Riscos computing.